War. War never changes. But the van build does go on, so we have a couple things I want to update you on. This is what happened with my last adventure. If you didn't catch it, my knee got really swollen, so I staged my fit previously, and I just continued to drive a van the rest of the way home. And eventually, when my knee recovered, I could go back and grab my fit. The importance of that is I had some time and realized I need better footage, so I got a new camera. And once I was feeling better, I went ahead and rode like the wind, and I was able to get my fit back safe and sound, use that to commute while I made space in the garage. I measured it out 3/4 of an inch, so I had to do some masterful driving. Got it in there barely, and I was ready to grind away all the rust. And I wore a cheap respirator at first, and you can imagine the results with this being my arm after the first night. So I quickly learned after coughing that night that a proper respirator was in order. So I used my genuine respirator from then on out, and you can see it in the reflection here, me wearing it. Again, when I was painting over the prep surface, I did use that rust converter, and once the rust converter cured, painted it, I got a little crazy, started painting the outside. I was planning on repainting the whole van anyways, so I was just touching up the rust spots and made it look worse. But that's how things go. You gotta make it improve before you can move forward with your progress. So patched all the holes. Wanted to make sure I didn't end up like those Ford SUVs with the police force where everyone's falling asleep on the job because all these gases are leaking up. So made sure everything was sealed and double sealed and triple checked. And I got some more parts at work for the build, basically some lumber. And once that was done, back in yet again to finish this time with the flooring. Now this was my knee was feeling better, but still not quite there. So kneeling down took a while. And of course, you got to do that, all his measurements. But I did take every single detail, wanted to make it look good, and started with the foam. And this is a process that takes time, measuring 3 times and only cutting once. The next step from placing the foam in place and using a hot knife to trim around the corners. I also used a saw, just depending on how broad the cut was. I then placed every panel with as many factory edges close to each other as possible. And then once that's done, repeat the process from the laminate. Now I had saved the cardboard cutouts of the odd shaped places to make it easier to recut those. And as you can see, things were a snap. Once it all came together, I had a few corners I still had to work on, but it was turning out nicely. So the foam underneath and the laminate on top did have some noise, but I figured once things were set on top of it like a bed, it would stop making that noise. And that was just due to the bulge in the floor in the middle that I really didn't have much control over. That's just how that van was. Now, I went to a little bit extreme, making sure every 1/4 of an inch had some sort of laminate and foam underneath it, even angled the coverage over the wheel wells. You can see it kind of got a little out of control with my OCD, but you know what? I was making this place my home. I really wanted to put some effort into it, and honestly, it turned out beautifully. So once that was done, I went ahead and took the proper glue and put laminate on top of it. And once that was done, I had to weigh everything down so the corners didn't warp up, but it honestly did seal everything a little bit nicer to the area so it didn't shuffle around anymore. If I went over a bump, I didn't hear it smack against the side of the walls or anything like that. And it also surprisingly was fairly quiet. Driving around without any floor at all to driving around with a laminate of on top of, I think is what, 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch foam was pretty good. Now the walls obviously weren't insulated and didn't have any Dynamat, but I think this is a process I would definitely repeat. Just maybe a little lighter. Like I mentioned, 1/2 inch would probably be more my preference moving forward. That is nice insulation to have, but honestly, that 1/2 an inch or 1/4 an inch, depending on which thickness you go with, can make a big difference in such a small space. So it was really big time sink. Would not recommend going to that detail of the corners, just kind of broad stroking it and calling it good enough. But I built a tank and it was necessary in this case so that I could waterproof the corners and know that no moisture is getting underneath, because mold was definitely a concern through all of this. Once it was looking good, I went ahead and built the adjustable bed and sink and countertop pretty quickly and made sure it was color coordinated. To help disguise it, I put a roof rack on and a ladder, and also had an awning to go on top. And just a few more finishing touches. Went ahead and finished the outside full detail, inside full detail, made this thing look as beautiful as it could, as this was my new home. And that's about where I left it. I will catch you up on the next video where we finish out the van build series. Until then, stay safe, have fun, peace.